It's so interesting to me to see how involved and intertwined Las Vegas and gambling has gotten with sports, and I'm not opposed to it whatsoever. And it's kind of taken a step further in that Vegas could make some of the decisions, possibly. At least that's what Josh Pate has suggested. So we can go ahead and get to that right now because he has a theory as to how the NCAA should seed or place teams based off what Vegas says. And let's be honest, we all talk about point spreads. This team is a 4 or 5 point spread. But really, Caleb, at the end of the day, Vegas knows who's going to win most games because those are called the money lines. And you and I do too, but Vegas is really good at it. Scary good at it. If they say team X is favored by 2, then typically team X wins. And those can be close games. Their money line is pretty spot on. And honestly, I'll give you a little bit of insight as to the way I pick my NCAA tournament bracket. I've used the money line because a lot of times you'll have a 6 and a 7, 8. You'll have a 6 and a 9 or a 6 and a 10, right? Excuse me.
7 and 10 or 6 and 11.
Sorry. 7 and 10 or a 6 and 11 for that matter play each other when actually the lower seeded team is the favorite according to Vegas. So they have more insight, or at least they have a different agenda than the NCAA when it comes to seeding these teams. So Josh Pate has an idea of utilizing Vegas and their input into some decisions that the NCAA makes. So I'm going to share this screen here and let's get to Josh Pate, who does a great job on the late kick. Here are his thoughts.
See, right now, if you're 8-4 and I play you, I probably don't get credit for a good win because you're probably not ranked in the top 25. And therefore, when the committee looks, you don't count as a top 25 win for me. But what if your 4 losses came against top 10 teams? Well, theoretically, you could be the 11th best team in the country and be 8-4. Again, that's an extreme example, but theoretically, that could be the case. Well, Vegas doesn't get fooled by that stuff.
No, they don't get fooled by that stuff, and I don't think they get caught up into that. So, do you see this being a real possibility, Caleb, that Vegas could be used to make a lot of decisions, including who makes the college football playoff, including who is the home team or the bye team for the college football playoff? Because at the end of the day, they are the experts. That's why there's huge buildings built in Las Vegas. What are your thoughts on Vegas getting more involved?
I am in full agreement with Josh Pate on this. And for those who don't know, this was a response to Nick Saban, who we both criticized yesterday for saying that his team should have been in the college football playoff because Vegas said it. I don't think Vegas should be used to determine home field advantage or who gets in the playoff. Because as Josh Pate said, at some point, results have to matter. Regardless of what you think, results have to matter on the field. And however, when you're judging schedule strength, that's where you can use it because, as he said, sometimes beating an 8-4 team is a much more impressive win than beating an 11-1 team. And even though the 11-1 team would be ranked much higher in the AP poll or the coaches poll or the college football playoff ranking, that 8-4 team may have more impressive losses. And at that point, when you're using schedule strength, you are getting much more subjective. I'm sorry, guys, but schedule strength, the RPI tried this for years. There's no effective way to make schedule strength completely mathematical and formulaic. You have to be subjective with schedule strength. And Vegas is the most objective, subjective way to determine schedule strength because they are completely immune to, they are specifically a power ranking. It's basically a power ranking with Vegas, which is who's playing the best and who is the best at that particular moment. And they're not going to be fooled. Again, a schedule strength issue would be, for example, if you played Tennessee last year when Hendon Hooker was starting, versus playing Tennessee when Joe Milton was starting, well, the polls and the college football playoff and the formula is going to view that as the exact same caliber of game. But Dave, you and I both know that's not the same game. You didn't play the same Tennessee team if you played them with Joe Milton versus Hendon Hooker. Or if you played Alabama when Jalen Milroe was starting versus when when Bryce Young was starting. Vegas will see that, but the pollsters won't.
Here are my thoughts on how much Vegas should be involved. People get this confused a lot, Caleb, and you gamble, so you don't. But the goal for Vegas is not to predict the winner. Okay, it's not to say such and such team's going to win by 7 points. The goal of Vegas is to make the betting even on each side so that they make the juice. They make the 10%. So you bet $100, you win 90. So they want to make the juice. They want the betting on even on each side. And that's why the number will move throughout the week. So Caleb, my problem with this is that maybe it helps with strength of schedule, but do you end up at a point where Vegas is making decisions over who plays where? That scares me. And it also scares me a little bit that there's a potential there for athletes, especially college athletes, but we've seen these issues in college and in the pros, to be even closer to gambling. And I think you and I would probably agree that the sport has overcome drug scandals. Major League Baseball has overcome steroid scandals. But if you have a big gambling scandal, that's kind of the one thing, at least to me, Caleb, maybe you don't agree, that if I thought there were Donegues running around, Tim Donaghy, like in the NBA, if I thought they were running around like crazy in college football, I would have a huge monster problem with that, because to me, you've turned it into Days of Our Lives. It's a soap opera. It is no longer the ending is determined. What I love about sports is I didn't know that Tennessee was going to beat Alabama. I didn't know that TCU was going to make the college football playoff. It was all undetermined. That to me is the advantage that sports has over any other sort of programming. And this is programming, is ultimately what it is, Caleb. So that scares me a little bit, that you might somehow get closer to Vegas and then closer to somebody trying to manipulate the outcome. If that happens, I don't know, that we may be talking about Taylor Swift instead of the Vols and the SEC every day, because that would be very disturbing.
Well, this is where I think Congress does need to step in. I think they need to stay out of NIL. They need to. I'm sorry, if your school isn't putting up as much NIL money as another school, find a way to do it. Tough break. Okay, but I will say, don't.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Congress stepping in for NILs to save businesses from themselves. It's not the player's fault if the business made a bad investment. Don't blame the player. Nobody else. So stay out of NIL. But gambling is a different story, because gambling, if you're betting on a sport you play, how is that not the exact same thing as insider trading? That is the exact same. There's no difference between that and insider trading to me.
Win or lose. That's what people say. Pete Rose just bet on his own team, which is debatable. But if he just bet on his own team, that's wrong.
Yeah, if he just bet on his own team, that's absolutely wrong. And also, because when you're betting on your own team, when you're not betting on your own team, that sends a signal to the bookmakers and to the bookies and the odds makers to maybe skew the odds that day, and maybe people won't bet that day. So it still skews everything with Vegas. I hate when people are like, oh, he was just betting on his team to win. That still is a huge, huge issue of one, insider trading, and two, skewing the odds in Vegas. It's not supposed to happen.
Especially in baseball, because you could run a guy out there that shouldn't be throwing in June so that he's ready for August or September. Right. Especially in baseball. But the same thing could happen in football. If you've got an offensive guard who could go, but maybe he shouldn't go because you're playing UTSA and you want to cover. I mean, that to me, you don't ever have to bet against your team for it to have a very negative impact. And by the way,
maybe Alabama leaving Tyrone Prothro in the game, which was dumb already as it was, but you could have a lot more of those if coaches are betting on their team to cover.
And you would wonder, now at the time, Nick Saban was big about guys playing special teams, so I didn't wonder. Nobody wondered, and I don't think he would ever bet on his team. But I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that something like this could happen. Bassey Lawn and Garden, man alive, it's worth the drive. If you're in Chattanooga or Nashville, or how about even Knoxville, it's worth the drive because of their buying power. You will save thousands or tens of thousands of dollars at Bassey Lawn and Garden, Bassey.com to learn more. Man alive, it is worth the drive. So do you think this is real? Do you think Josh Pate's theory might actually come to fruition in terms of the strength of schedule thing, or is this something fun to talk about in June?
I think it's something fun to talk about. I would love it. I think that's the most effective way to do strength of schedule, but I don't think there's I don't logistically think there's a way they could do it. I think here's what they're going to do. I think the College Football Playoff Committee is going to not officially, but unofficially summon Vegas to break down strength of schedule. But it won't be on the record that they do that, because you are with me. I don't believe the College Football Playoff Committee watches every game. You will not convince me ever that they watch every game.
It'd be physically impossible.
Yeah.
Do you think that the SEC is aware of when they set the schedule for the upcoming weeks? Do you think they have a rough idea of the point spread because they want the closest game to be on, well, in the past, the CBS window at 3:30? Do you think they have a rough idea of that?
I think they actually think, no, I don't. I think they have a rough idea, but I don't think they base a schedule on that. They base a schedule on what's going to get the most viewership each week for just games that are a draw. Even when Florida was dominating Tennessee, Tennessee was always on CBS.
Okay, but let me stop you for 1 second. The most viewership is probably going to be the closest game, and you want the games to be closer at the end, which your Tennessee, Florida thought flies in the face of this and makes me look stupid. But you're right. But if the game's close at the end, you lead into your CBS programming. That's the theory. That's why before Sunday Night Football, those 4:30 games were so big, because they would lead into what? Tick, 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 60 minutes. And 60 minutes always got incredible ratings. So you do want the game to be close late.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That would be CBS's responsibility, though. And with Tennessee, Florida, they only thought ratings at that point, because they did not care that the game was in hand in the fourth quarter and that Florida was winning by 30. I mean, they still were running the game every year, which was kind of
they got because of Tennessee, they got the Big Mac with one patty, not two, because they weren't close in a lot of those games in the 90s. And they didn't get both, but they still got the premier game of September. No question about it.